Guys, it just dawned on me that I have run out of grace. I have run out of time. I am not considered as insightful as I was when I was younger. Let me explain. I just had a social meeting with a couple of colleagues, and in the meeting we were talking, sharing ideas. And while sharing the idea, I shared something quite insightful. Have you ever shared something insightful that at the end, when you watch people's reaction and even you hear yourself talk, you're like, that was quite insightful of me. I wasn't fully aware I was that wise. Has that happened to you before? And so it was one of those moments, right? I had that wow moments for myself. And after the social gathering, I'm just taking a break. I'm going back to my place, and one of the friends who was present called me aside, and in the conversation, the topic of age came up. So he wanted to know my age, and I shared my age with the person. We're talking about experiences and age, and then the person said, so maybe your age is a factor why you seem so insightful. And I thought about it on my way back, and I figured, no, wait a minute, I've always been this insightful. But now it's become kind of expected. It's become a given that with my age, I should have a certain amount of wisdom and a certain amount of insight. Have you ever been in such a position before? Let me give you back in my childhood. When I was a child, I've almost always been the insightful one, right? So I've had colleagues and even adults. Sometimes my parents and older family members would come to me to share their problems or issues with me just to get my insight on that. I used to think it was a joke, but later, even during family meetings, I would later hear them implementing solutions and ideas that I gave them. And that has been most of my trend in my adulthood, right? I have friends and some family who would come to me to just hear my side of things. And it just dawned on me now a couple of minutes ago that I am out of that grace, that time when I used to be considered a wise child or a child that had an old soul. You heard that term before, that this child has an old soul or a sage. The wisdom of the ancestors were passed down to you. Now I guess I've become the ancestor where I am supposed to be this wise. I am supposed to be this insightful. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Out of grace, out of time. It dawned on me that I am out of that grace. And just trying to let you be aware. You may have certain grace upon your life, certain periods in your life that if you're not careful, you may run out of. It doesn't necessarily mean it's your fault or anything. It's just the natural order of things. Let me give you an example. So there can be a child who was abused as a child, right? Physically, emotionally, psychologically, any kind of abuse. That is not the fault of the child. No, it cannot be. But as you get older, as an adult, as a well-functioning member of society, there comes a point where you cannot attribute your failures in life because of that abuse you experience. Yes, you are going to have a hard time. Yes, it was painful and it's set you back. And I'm in no way discrediting the abuse, but I'm saying there would come a time where that abuse cannot be the reason why you are not progressing in life. That is the case, you should seek help. You should go to therapy, counseling, find an appropriate place, seek help as much as you can. I am in no way discrediting abuse. I myself as a child faced different kinds of abuse before, so I have a fair share what I'm talking about. I know someone whose father did not do a great job raising him. The father was never present in his life. And so in the part of the world where I come from, you have to pay for tuition, right? Education is not free. And the mother was not able to. He was very smart, but he was not able to because his father, who had the money, refused to play that role, refused to pay. And so he wasn't able to have a proper education. And he used that excuse quite a lot in life. Oh, my father didn't help me. My father didn't pay for my tuition fees. But he's now over 40 years old. He is still using that excuse, that example. That's what I mean. You cannot be 40 years old and still be blaming your father for not paying your tuition fees as the reason why you are not successful. I understand it to be that, yes, that's going to set you back. probably that's going to restrict the amount of success you could have achieved had your parents done what they should have done, right? But there come to a point where you have to be old enough, you have to become matured enough, and you have to own up and take accountability for what you can. You cannot heal everything, you cannot recover and save the past time, but you have to put in effort to be a better person. That's what I'm talking about. That grace, that excuse that you have, that my father did not take care of me, my mother abused me, my family abused me, or someone abused you. It was only going to last for a certain period. Like, I used to be considered a wise child or anything, so I always stayed in that grace of wisdom, right? And now it's expected of me to be wise. And so I'm sure you've met some adults that you expect them to be reasonable. You expect them to have a certain amount of insight and wisdom. And when you encounter them and they do not have that, you are quite disappointed in them. And you know, the fun fact, it's not even a fixed line. It's not like there's a fixed line that when you are 30 or when you are 25 or when you are 40, you should be wise. It's just a very gray, invisible line that we don't really know when you just jump over that line. But once you do, you run out of that excuse. You could extrapolate this idea into so many ways, right? It could be, say you're a young lady, you're a very pretty lady. That is the grace that you have. Make sure that while you're in that prettiness grace, you take advantage of it, as in if it opens doors for you. My understanding is use that door to be a better person, to get the skills you need to be a better person in life, to get to the places you need to be in life, right? There will come a time where that grace, that beauty is going to fade out, right? Even if you are 60 years old and you have that beauty, you cannot be 60 and relying on that beauty to open doors for you, right? You cannot be a 40-year-old naive person. When you're a child, you're expected to be naive to a certain point. That's the grace I am talking about. There come to a point where you are going to run out of grace. You are going to run out of time. You cannot blame the fact that you are an illegal immigrant. You cannot use the excuse or grace that you are a foreigner in a different country. That is why you are not succeeding. Yes, that is true, and that is going to be true for a period of time. How much time, you ask me? I don't know, but there's a gray line. Deep down, when you listen to yourself, there will come a time you would instinctively know, if you're intuitive enough, that I cannot use this time period anymore. If you don't have that self-reflexive intuition, watch around. Watch how people react when you tell them. So when you tell people, do they have sympathy and empathy towards you and they want to help you? If yes, then probably, I guess you are still in that grace. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. But there will come a time where you cannot say that, oh, because I was an engineer in my country, a doctor in my country, a successful person in my country, and then I moved to a different location, different country, because they spoke a different language, because their way of doing things were different. That's why I am not successful. I have lived on 3 different continents. I had to rise up from ground up on these 3 different continents. And so I have a fair idea what I'm talking about. That grace period can only last you for a bit. If you really want your life to amount to something, I guess it will come a point where you have to own up, right? And so, yes, you are an illegal immigrant at a point, and that slowed you down, your progress. Yes, you were fat at a point, and that slowed you time. Whatever your excuses, whatever your grace is, it is valid. But there's going to be a time where it's not going to work anymore. You are going to run out of time. And that is what I'm talking about. Out of grace, out of time. It just dawned on me that I have run out of grace in the essence of me being an insightful child. I'm not a child anymore. I cannot, in the very coming months or probably a year or 2, I cannot even consider myself a youth anymore. I'm a full grown and blown adult, right? I'm a full man. I cannot rely on that youthful excuses anymore. So all I'm saying is there are periods in life that I call them grace periods, right? And so at the end of the day, I want you to be aware of the graces you have in your life. Whether you are a child, that is a grace period. If you're a male or female, a youth, that's a grace period. If you're a newcomer or a first year student or anything, that is a grace period. You cannot be a fourth year or a third year student in a university or a college or in a school and be missing assignment deadlines and tell me you don't know how the system works. That only tells people you are not a serious person. But if you're first year, you have that grace of first year, people would kind of have a soft heart towards you. They've been there, they would understand and maybe help you out. But the third year, after 3 years, you are still given the skills like you don't know the room that you were writing exams and whatnot. So your responsibility to find out, it comes to a point where you have to. I want you to be aware of the period that you are in, whatever phase it is in your life. And I want to let you know that you cannot use this excuse over and over. There's coming a point where it's going to expire. When you say it, people are going to kind of get pissed or unhappy with you. It just becomes an excuse. So one, be aware of it. The second one is when it happens, accept it. You have to accept that you are not in that grace period anymore. Maybe use that as a trigger to the third point. Use that as a trigger to evolve, be a better person, to grow up and to develop. And so that's what I use at certain periods in my life. When I moved to a new country, they wouldn't accept certain qualifications that I had, right? So I had to start from ground up. So I did manual jobs for a point. But for how long? After a while, I realized that after 2 years, no one considered me new to the country anymore. And so I realized that that grace period had expired. I had to do something to better myself. And so when that happens to you, use that as a trigger call, right? Don't use your divorce or you taking care of your children. Whatever your grace is, it is valid. It's going to work, but it's only for a time period. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a naive observer.